Hey guys, tonight we slip gently back to the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, into a world where dawn smells of wet clay and the future of civilization is still something like an experiment. You are in ancient Sumer, around 2500 BCE, and you, lucky you, are a farmer. Well, maybe lucky is a stretch, since the work is endless and your back is going to remind you about that later. You probably won't survive this life for more than 30 or 40 years, but for now, you've got breath in your lungs and a day ahead. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, post your location and your local time in the comments so I can see who's drifting off across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first sounds you hear are not the melodic calls of birds, though yes, some cranes and herons might flap lazily over the reeds, but mostly the sharp insistence of roosters and the shuffle of neighbors already stirring. Your home is a simple mud brick structure, its walls plastered and drying in the rising heat. The smell is earthy, faintly damp, because dew still clings to the thatch and clay. You roll over on your reed mat, scratch an itch from last night's mosquito bites, and blink at the rectangle of light creeping in through the doorway. The courtyard is alive with motion, children squabbling over a clay toy, women sweeping dust, and your neighbor who has an uncanny talent for loudly coughing just when you want silence. You grunt, stand, and stretch. Your bones pop in protest because yes, even in 2500 BCE, mornings are rough. You step outside barefoot into the cool grit. The street isn't paved, it's a worn track of trampled earth, dotted with goat droppings and the occasional discarded reed rope. Still, it's home. This is one of the bustling cities of Sumer, though your own quarter feels more like a village stitched together inside city walls. Above you, the sky is still pale gray, slowly bleeding into pink. The temple ziggurat dominates the horizon, a stepped mountain of sun-dried brick, stacked so high you wonder how people don't get dizzy climbing it. The priests will already be up there, muttering prayers to Enlil or Inanna, probably while sipping something more delicious than the gritty barley beer you'll get later. But for now, your day begins with chores. Always chores. You walk back into your house, where your wife is already grinding grain on a heavy basalt slab, rhythmically moving a stone roller back and forth until flour sifts out. The sound is steady, almost like breathing. She doesn't look up when you come in, because in truth, this is routine, and you're just another body moving through the space. There's a small water basin in the corner, filled yesterday from the canal. You splash your face. It's not cold anymore, just tepid, but still refreshing. You grab a twig, fibrous, frayed at the end, and chew it to brush your teeth. Historians still argue whether Sumerians really had the concept of dental hygiene or just liked chewing sticks. But you know from experience that after chewing one, your mouth feels less swampy. That counts. As you rinse, a mosquito buzzes too close, and you swat it with the precision of someone who has already lost too much blood to these buzzing demons. Funny thing is, clay tablets mention using crocodile dung as a kind of protective paste. You don't have crocodile dung handy this morning, but honestly, do you really want to smear yourself with that? Probably not. Outside, someone is already hollering about an escaped goat, and the clamor of early life rises. This is not a quiet dawn. It is noisy, bustling, filled with movement. Civilization is young, but humans are already excellent at being slightly too loud too early. The smell of barley porridge wafts in. Your stomach rumbles. But before breakfast, there's always that little mental inventory. Tools in place? Oxen still tethered? Floodwater level in the canal manageable? You'll check it all later, but the awareness hangs heavy, like a list you can't stop rehearsing. Still, for a fleeting moment, you step outside again and let yourself watch the horizon. The sun is climbing now, golden light sliding down the temple, casting long shadows across mud brick walls. The air is warming. In a few hours, it will be stifling. You enjoy the breeze while it lasts. A dog trots past, wagging its tail, carrying half a reed basket in its mouth, like some proud offering. You laugh softly, because humor survives every age. And maybe, just maybe, this is the nicest part of the day. Those few minutes before the real work begins, when the city hums awake and you feel like you're part of something larger. Civilization itself, historians say, sprouts here in Sumer. Agriculture, writing, laws, so many firsts. Of course, from your perspective, it just means endless obligations. Fields to plow, canals to repair, priests to appease. But isn't that the story of every age? The grand innovations of history are usually someone else's paperwork. A neighbor greets you, his beard scraggly, his tunic dusty already. He waves a clay jug of beer and jokes, "Breakfast?" You grin, wave him off. Too early. Besides, you'll need your wits about you to wrangle oxen later. He shrugs, takes a swig, and wanders on. Classic. The roosters crow again, though honestly they've been crowing non-stop since midnight, as if competing for some invisible trophy. You sigh, brush a bit of dust from your tunic, and glance back at the interior of your home. The mat is still rumpled, the floor scattered with grain husks, the walls etched faintly with soot from last night's oil lamp. Ordinary details, but comforting in their own way. Life expectancy here isn't long. You know this in your bones, in the stories of neighbors who didn't see another planting season. Yet each dawn feels like a small defiance. You're still here. You're still waking to the smell of earth, the chatter of neighbors, and the relentless crowing of birds. The city is alive now. From the direction of the temple, you hear drums, deep, slow, ceremonial. Priests call to the gods, asking for fertile fields, safe floods, good harvests. Whether the gods listen or not, who knows? Historians still argue whether those rituals were sincere devotion or more about political theater. To you, though, they're background music, woven into every morning. You stretch again, roll your shoulders, and let the warmth of the sun finally hit your face. It's going to be another long, exhausting day in Sumer. But for now, at this first breath of dawn, you feel awake, alive, and oddly at peace. Your stomach growls again. Time for breakfast. You shuffle toward the corner of your small courtyard where the household basin waits. It's nothing fancy, just a large clay jar sunk into the ground, filled with water you carried yesterday from the canal. Overnight, the water has gone a little murky with silt, and you swear a frog might have hopped in at some point. You shrug. At this point in your life, you're less worried about frogs than about dehydration. You kneel and scoop up a splash in your cupped hands, throwing it over your face. The shock is mild, since the water is already lukewarm, but it does the trick. Dust and sweat from the sticky night rinse away. You bend closer, peer into the rippling surface, and catch your own reflection. Your beard is patchy, your eyes bleary, but hey, you're still standing. In Sumer, that counts as a win. A child darts past you, your son, laughing as he clutches a reed toy shaped like a tiny boat. He kicks up dust, nearly knocks over a basket of onions, and disappears through the doorway before you can bark his name. You sigh, splash more water on your face, and think briefly about how every household in the neighborhood probably looks the same at this hour. Parents trying to keep order, children running wild, goats being louder than goats have any right to be. You pick up a chewed twig from the shelf by the doorway. The end is frayed, softened from use. You stick it in your mouth, chewing until the fibers spread into something like bristles. Then you rub it across your teeth. It's not minty fresh, but it beats walking around with barley bread grits stuck in your molars. Historians still argue whether Sumerians used twigs from specific medicinal trees or just any old branch within reach. Either way, you feel a little cleaner now, even if your breath still carries the faint aroma of yesterday's onion stew. As you scrub, a mosquito buzzes around your ear. You swat it with a practiced flick and miss. It circles back like it's taunting you, then lands on your arm. This time, you slap it flat, leaving behind a little smear of blood that, let's be honest, is probably not even yours. Mosquitoes have no respect for property rights. You mutter under your breath and wipe your arm clean with the hem of your tunic. Funny thing, someone once swore by crocodile dung as a mosquito repellent. Maybe it worked. Maybe it was a cruel prank passed down through generations. You picture yourself smearing that across your arms, smelling like a swamp monster all day, and shake your head. No thanks. You'll take the bites. You lean back on your heels, dripping water from your beard, and glance toward the alleyway outside your home. Neighbors are already moving about. One woman balances a clay jar on her head, walking with the practiced grace of someone who could probably do it in her sleep. Another man crouches in the dust, retying the strap on his sandal. The smell of smoke from a hearth drifts in, carrying with it the faint aroma of frying onions. It makes your stomach growl, even though you know what's waiting for you inside isn't much better than gritty bread. Your wife steps into the courtyard, wipes her hands on her tunic, and hands you a small cloth. You dry your face and hands, then hang the cloth on a peg by the doorway. She nods approvingly. Small rituals matter. Staying clean doesn't just keep you comfortable, it keeps sickness at bay, at least as much as anyone in your world can hope. Behind her, your youngest daughter toddles out, barefoot, holding a lump of clay. She shoves it toward you proudly. It's supposed to be a figurine of a sheep, though it looks more like a blob with 4 stubs. You smile, pat her head, and tell her it's beautiful. She beams, then promptly drops it in the dust. Typical. As you stretch your arms overhead, you feel the weight of the day settling on your shoulders. There's a rhythm to all this. Wash, chew the twig, chase off mosquitoes, nod to the neighbors. These small actions mark the boundary between night's rest and the grind of labor. Without them, the day would blur into endless toil. Somewhere down the street, a man yells at his donkey. The animal brays in protest, stubborn as ever. The sound bounces off the mud brick walls, joined by the clatter of pots, the squawk of chickens, and the sharp call of a woman demanding her children stop climbing the roof. Civilization in all its noisy glory. You pick up a small bronze comb from the shelf and run it through your hair. It snags, pulling out a couple of knots, but the act makes you feel slightly more put together. Quirky fact, bronze combs were status symbols here. A farmer like you having one might seem surprising, but the truth is, markets overflow with trinkets traded from faraway lands. Sometimes you can snag something shiny when the merchants are desperate to offload. You're not rich, but you're not about to let your hair look like a goat's backside either. As you finish, the drums from the temple begin again, slow, steady beats echoing over the rooftops. The priests are summoning the gods to witness another day of human effort. Whether the gods care, who can say? Historians still argue whether Sumerians truly believed their prayers altered the floods, or whether it was more about keeping social order. You don't dwell on it. The sound is just part of life, like the crow of roosters or the slap of water in your basin. You take one last scoop, rinsing the dust from your hands, and feel a moment of gratitude for the simple gift of water. Not everyone in the city has easy access, and every year the river's moods threaten to wash it all away. This basin, this courtyard, this act of washing, it grounds you. Your wife calls from inside. Breakfast is ready. You nod, stretch once more, and glance toward the horizon. The sun is higher now, gilding the city walls, catching on the ziggurat like fire on stone. The day is waiting, full of labor, sweat, and probably more mosquito bites. But you've washed, you've chewed your twig, and you feel just awake enough to face it. You duck back inside, stomach growling, ready for barley and dates. Inside, the air is warm with the smell of barley. Your wife crouches over the grinding stone, pushing the heavy roller back and forth across the grain. The scrape is steady, almost hypnotic, like the heartbeat of the household. You take a seat on a low reed stool, and soon enough she hands you a small round of bread. It's dense, flat, and already crumbling at the edges. You bite into it, and immediately you're reminded, grit, always grit. No matter how finely she grinds, tiny bits of stone from the millstone sneak in, leaving you with the delightful experience of sandpapering your molars. Congratulations, your teeth will thank you later by wearing down decades too soon. Still, it fills the belly. You chew slowly, breaking off a piece to dip into a small bowl of mashed dates. The sweetness cuts through the dryness, and for a brief moment, you almost forget the grit. Your youngest daughter waddles over, reaching for your bread with sticky hands. You give her a piece, and she immediately drops it in the dust, then picks it up without hesitation. You glance at your wife, who shrugs. Floor spice, she seems to say, adds texture. Beside you, your son slurps noisily from a cup of watered-down beer. Don't imagine a frothy pint glass. This is thick, cloudy, and closer to liquid bread than anything you'd call refreshing. You lift your own cup, take a sip, and wince at the sour tang. It's not terrible, but let's just say you wouldn't pay temple prices for this stuff. Still, it's safer than water straight from the river, so you drink. The family eats together in a kind of practiced silence, broken by little moments of laughter. Your son tries to tell a joke about a goat falling into a canal, but halfway through he forgets the punchline. Everyone groans, and you tease him that maybe he should stick to farming instead of comedy. He grins, flicks a crumb at you, and ducks before you can swat him. From outside, the morning noise grows louder, neighbors calling to each other, dogs barking, and the distant sound of a merchant shouting about fresh fish down at the market. The city is awake, bustling, and so are you, fortified by your humble breakfast. Here's a fact you probably don't think about as you chew. Barley is the backbone of your entire world. It feeds your family, it ferments your kebir, and it even pays your taxes. The priests don't want your jokes, your laughter, or your broken sandals. They want sacks of barley. Without it, society collapses. With it, you survive another season. It's funny how the fate of empires often rests on something so unglamorous as grain. You take another bite, crunch through another bit of stone, and sigh. One quirky tidbit you've heard: some Sumerians like to flavor their bread with herbs or honey, but around here, luxuries like that rarely find their way into your kitchen. You once tried mixing in extra dates to impress your neighbor at a feast, but the bread burned and stuck to the pan. He still teases you about it when he passes by. Breakfast winds down. Your wife gathers the bowls, rinsing them quickly with a splash from the water jar. Your son lingers, licking the last sweet date mash from his fingers. You pretend not to notice when he sneaks another piece of bread from the basket. He'll burn it off chasing goats anyway. You lean back, belly warm, and glance at the doorway. Outside, the light is growing stronger, harsher. The cool comfort of dawn is fading. You know what comes next: the fields. You'll need to check the calendar, those clay tablet marks scratched by the village scribe, to be sure it's the right day to plow. But first, you let yourself savor this moment. Bread, dates, beer, family. Simple, ordinary, and yet the foundation of your entire existence. Your wife breaks the quiet by chuckling. "You still chew like an ox," she says, shaking her head. You raise your cup of beer and mock salute. "Better an ox than a donkey," you reply. She laughs, and for a second, the weight of the day ahead feels lighter. From the corner of the room, your daughter pipes up with a question. "Baba, why do we always eat barley?" You pause mid-bite. How do you explain to a child that civilization itself depends on this stubborn grain? Instead, you ruffle her hair and say, "Because barley makes you strong." She beams, satisfied with the answer, and goes back to gnawing on her crumb. Historians still argue whether children in Sumer truly understood how central agriculture was, or whether they just grew up surrounded by it like air. But in your home, it's not a debate, it's just life. Barley today, barley tomorrow, barley forever. As you finish your cup, you set it down with a dull thud. The meal is over. You wipe your hands on your tunic, stretch your arms, and prepare to step outside. The day won't wait, and the fields certainly won't plow themselves. But at least you've had your breakfast. The kind of meal that keeps you upright, even if it leaves your teeth feeling like you've chewed gravel. You rise, exchange a quick word with your wife, and nod to your children. Then you duck through the doorway, back into the brightening light. Ahead lies work, sweat, and the constant murmur of the river. But behind you, the laughter and warmth of breakfast lingers, a small anchor against the tide of labor. You step back into the courtyard, stomach pleasantly heavy from barley and dates, though your teeth are still reminding you about the grit. The air is brighter now, the sun clearing the horizon, chasing away the softer hues of dawn. This is the moment when thought gives way to planning. Before the real sweat of the fields begins, you need to check what the stars and scribes have to say about today's work. On a low shelf near the wall rests a clay tablet, baked hard from the last time it sat too close to the hearth. It's covered with little wedge-shaped impressions, cuneiform, the mighty script of Sumer. You aren't a scribe, so don't expect to read every sign yourself. Still, some of the markings are familiar. The scratches that tell you which week to sow, which days to leave the oxen resting, when the temple demands deliveries. You squint at it, tracing your finger along the rough ridges, pretending you understand more than you do. This tablet is your calendar, or at least the closest thing you've got. Priests and scribes make these records based on the movement of stars and the cycle of the moon. They'll insist that today is perfect for plowing, or for repairing dikes, or for offering a lamb to Inanna. Whether they're divining cosmic truth or just trying to justify their temple salaries is another matter. Historians still argue whether the Sumerian calendar was primarily astronomical or political, designed to keep farmers like you on task or to align the gods' moods with tax collection. You tilt the tablet in the sun, catch a shadow across one set of marks, and mutter, "According to this, it's a favorable day for beginning field work again." Great, that means no excuses. You glance toward your oxen, still tethered in the pen by the house. One is lazily flicking flies with its tail, the other is chewing in that slow, indifferent way that makes you question whether it's thinking about anything at all. Lucky beasts, they don't need to read tablets. Your neighbor passes by carrying his own clay shard. He catches your eye, raises his eyebrows, and asks, "Is it plowing today or tomorrow?" You shrug, hold up your tablet. "Today, it seems." He frowns. "My tablet says tomorrow." You both laugh. Classic. Even in a city of writing and record-keeping, the scribes can't quite agree. Maybe one had too much beer the night before he pressed those wedge marks. Maybe another just wanted an early nap. Either way, the heavens may decree one thing, but down here in the dust, you'll follow your stomach and your instincts. The soil waits for no scribe. Still, there's comfort in ritual. You set the tablet back on the shelf and bow your head briefly, not a formal prayer, just a quick acknowledgement. Whether the stars truly dictate your fate or not, it feels safer to nod along. After all, if the gods are watching and you ignore the signs, you could end up with fields of weeds instead of barley, And worse, your wife would never let you live that down. You wander to the gate, lean in against the wooden frame, and gaze up at the brightening sky. The moon has already faded, but some of the constellations linger in your mind. There's the plow star, the one the elders point out to remind you when to break the soil. There's the great bull of heaven, which the poets say Inanna once unleashed in anger, though to you it just looks like a crooked line of dots. You chuckle quietly. Leave it to poets to make everything dramatic. To a farmer, stars are just a clock in the sky, shining reminders of when to work. A rooster crows again. You sigh. Maybe the rooster is the more honest calendar. When it crows, you get up. When it crows again, you get moving. Simple, no wedge marks required. But you still can't ignore that clay tablet. It carries authority, weight, even mystery. Sometimes the scribe himself visits the market and reads aloud from a whole tablet of predictions. This week, the floods will rise, or this month, avoid planting too deep. You nod along like everyone else, though half the time you're thinking, I knew that already just by looking at the river. One quirky tidbit you've heard, some farmers swear by watching the behavior of frogs instead of the stars. If the frogs croak more loudly, they say, rain is coming. If they're quiet, it means dry skies. Honestly, you trust the frogs as much as the scribes. They don't carry temple agendas, they just croak. You step back into the courtyard, the clay cool beneath your feet, and glance once more at the tablet. You imagine future generations puzzling over these marks, debating what they mean. Maybe someone far away, thousands of years later, will hold one and think, these were the first attempts at organizing time. You grin at the thought. If only they knew how often the tablets contradicted each other, or how much you relied on the sun and your aching back more than on tiny wedge impressions. Still, the calendar serves its purpose. It tells you today is for plowing, and so, like countless mornings before, you gather your resolve. The oxen need to be yoked, the plow dragged to the field, the soil broken open. The calendar, the stars, the frogs, they all converge on this truth. The work must begin. You pick up your staff, slap the dust from your tunic, and step toward the pen. The oxen snort as if in acknowledgement, though more likely they're just annoyed you're about to put them to work. You grin, mutter, "Don't worry, I hate this as much as you do," and head off to fetch the yoke. The oxen are waiting, broad-shouldered and slow-eyed, in the pen by your courtyard wall. They are enormous creatures, with hides the color of wet clay and horns that curve like crescent moons. Their tails swish lazily, knocking dust into the air and slapping against their own flanks to scatter the flies. You stand at the gate, hands on your hips, and sigh. These beasts may be your most valuable possessions, but they also have a knack for making your life difficult at exactly the wrong moments. You grab the yoke from where it hangs on a peg. It's a heavy wooden beam with two curved notches to fit across the oxen's necks. The leather straps dangle from its sides, stiff from yesterday's sweat and sun. You run your hand along the wood, checking for cracks. If this yoke splits in the field, your whole day collapses with it. The thought makes you rub it twice, like a good luck charm. Stepping into the pen, you clap your hands and mutter encouragement. The first ox looks at you with bored disdain, chewing cud like a philosopher considering the futility of life. The second flicks an ear and shifts its weight, stamping a hoof into the dirt. You approach slowly. Calm is the trick. You've learned that rushing them only earns you a stomped toe, or worse, a headbutt to the ribs. You slip the yoke over their necks, one at a time. The wood settles heavily, pressing into their thick hides. You adjust the leather straps, tightening them with knots you've tied so often your hands work without thinking. One strap creaks, threatening to snap, and you mutter under your breath. You'll need to replace that before long, maybe barter at the market for fresh leather. For now, you tug it tighter and hope it holds. The oxen grunt, shifting closer together, and you pat their flanks. "Good boys," you whisper, though you're not entirely sure they deserve the compliment. One snorts in response, spraying a bit of warm air onto your arm. You wipe it off, grimacing. The joys of livestock. Your son darts into the pen, barefoot and eager. He clutches a stick and taps one ox gently on the side. "I'll drive them today, Baba," he declares with the bravado of someone who doesn't yet know how much sweat is involved. You chuckle, shake your head, and ruffle his hair. "Not yet. Maybe when you're taller than the yoke." He pouts, but you hand him a rope to lead instead. That way, he feels important, and you get an extra set of hands. Together, you guide the oxen out of the pen. Their hooves thud against the ground, slow and deliberate. The animals lumber into the street, and neighbors step aside, nodding as you pass. Everyone knows the sight of yoked oxen means a day's labor is about to begin. One old man leans on his cane and calls out, "May your furrows be straight." You grin, nod back, and resist the urge to reply, "They're only straight until the ox sneezes." As you walk, you can't help but think about how central these animals are to your existence. Without them, plowing would mean dragging the wooden blade yourself, bent double, sweating until your arms give out. With them, the soil yields faster, the work spreads wider, and the harvest grows larger. The oxen are not just beasts, they are extensions of your own strength. There's a mainstream fact every Sumerian farmer knows. Oxen were among the first domesticated animals in this land, vital for turning the rich alluvial soil. Without them, Sumer might never have supported cities like Uruk, or Lagash. With them, fields stretch farther, granaries swell fuller, and kings grow richer. You, of course, just want enough barley to keep your family fed. You turn down a narrow lane, leading toward the open fields beyond the city wall. The oxen plod along, unhurried, tails flicking. Your son skips ahead, tugging at the rope, pretending he's the master of the herd. You laugh softly, shaking your head at his enthusiasm. Childhood is the only time farming feels like play. One quirky tidbit drifts through your mind. Some say that oxen, if treated kindly, remember their owners for life. Others claim they bear grudges, waiting years for the perfect chance to step on your foot. You glance at the nearest hoof, massive, heavy, perfectly positioned to crush your toes, and wince at the memory of last season when you limped for a week. Yes, you believe the grudge theory. Absolutely. The city wall looms ahead, its mud brick surface glowing in the sunlight. Beyond it, the fields stretch wide, flat and waiting. You can already smell the dampness of the soil carried on the breeze from the canals. The oxen snort, sensing where they're headed. Their pace quickens slightly, though you suspect that's more from eagerness to graze than any enthusiasm for plowing. As you pass through the gate, a group of farmers joins you, each with their own beasts and tools. There's laughter, chatter, the slap of sandals on packed earth. One man jokes that his ox refuses to work unless it's bribed with onions. Another swears his beast listens better to his wife's voice than to his own. You all laugh because somehow complaining about oxen makes them easier to tolerate. Historians still argue whether Sumerian farmers shared communal herds or kept mostly private ones. In your experience, it's a mix. The animals belong to households, but when the plowing season comes, everyone works side by side. After all, the soil doesn't care whose ox drags the plow, it only cares that it's turned. The open plain greets you, stretching toward the horizon in shades of brown and green. The irrigation ditches glisten in the morning sun, carrying precious water from the Euphrates. Birds scatter as you approach, wings flashing. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs with the scent of wet earth. This is your life, your livelihood, your inheritance. And it all begins with yoking the oxen. Leather straps cutting across their broad shoulders, wooden beam creaking as they shift. You guide them to the edge of your field, pat their flanks once more, and adjust the straps again. The yoke sits firm, the plow lies ready. Your son grins, eager to watch. You smile back, though you know the real work is just beginning. The oxen snort, paw the soil, and you mutter, "All right, boys, let's see if we can make this straight." The day stretches ahead, long and heavy, but for now, you've taken the first step. The yoke is secure, the beasts are tethered, and the fields are waiting. The plow rests where you left it yesterday, leaning against a reed fence. It's not much to look at. A long wooden shaft, roughly hewn, with a heavy wedge of sharpened timber at the bottom. No iron here. Metal is too costly for a farmer's tools. This blade is just wood, hardened by fire, darkened at the edges, and smoothed by countless furrows dragged through clay. You pick it up, test its weight, and sigh. Familiar, dependable, and unforgiving. You hitch the plow to the yoke, sliding the pole into place between the oxen. The leather straps creak as you fasten them. The beasts shift, already annoyed at being pressed into service so early. One stamps its hoof in protest. The other gives a low, rumbling grunt that sounds suspiciously like a complaint. You pat their flanks, whisper an encouragement. "Come on, boys, the barley won't plant itself." Your son watches with wide eyes, clutching the rope as if he's the general commanding an army. He tugs gently, leading the oxen forward, and the plow jerks into motion. You grip the handles, leaning your weight against them, guiding the wooden blade as it bites into the soil. The ground resists at first. The alluvial earth is thick, heavy with moisture from the river's last flood. You grunt, pushing harder, until finally the plow carves a line, a rough groove in the brown earth. The smell rises immediately, wet clay, rich and fertile. You breathe it in deeply. This is the scent of life in Sumer, the very reason cities like and Uruk exist. But don't be fooled, it's exhausting work. You press your shoulders against the plow, forcing it deeper, while the oxen strain at the yoke. Their muscles ripple under their hides, hooves sinking slightly with every step. The wooden blade drags, grinds, and lifts clods of earth, turning the surface into furrows. Your arms ache almost instantly. This is not a task for the faint-hearted or the short-winded. Every few steps, you curse under your breath as the plow hits a stone. The blade jolts, nearly jerking the handle out of your hands. You steady it, kick the stone aside, and keep going. Your son laughs, but when you hand him the handles to try, he barely manages 3 steps before the plow veers sideways. He yelps, letting go, and you catch it just in time. You ruffle his hair, grinning. "Not so easy, eh?" He pouts, but the lesson is learned. Farming looks simple until you actually try it. The furrows slowly stretch across the field, uneven but serviceable. Sweat drips down your back, soaking your tunic. You wipe your brow with your sleeve, leaving a streak of mud across your face. The sun climbs higher, burning away the last of the morning coolness. The oxen snort, their breath steaming in the warming air. As you guide the plow, you can't help but think of the yearly rhythm that rules your life. The floods come, spreading rich silt across the plain. Then, as the waters recede, you plow and sow. Without this pattern, the soil would dry and crack, nothing would grow, and your family would starve. Every furrow you cut now is a small insurance against hunger later. A mainstream fact every Sumerian knows. The Tigris and Euphrates are both gift and threat. Too little flood and the crops wither. Too much and the fields vanish underwater. The gods, it seems, love to keep you guessing. You pause to rest, leaning on the plow handles, and glance at the oxen. They chew slowly on nothing, pretending they're already grazing. One flicks its tail at a fly, nearly smacking your son in the face. He ducks, laughing. You roll your eyes. Even in the middle of work, the beasts find a way to mock you. Some farmers whisper that oxen can sense earthquakes before they happen. They'll snort, stamp, or suddenly refuse to move. You've never witnessed it yourself, but you remember your grandfather swearing that his ox once dragged him out of a field minutes before the ground shook. Whether it's true or just a farmer's tale, you're not sure. But as you watch your beasts twitch their ears, you wonder if maybe they know more than they let on. You spit into the dirt, rub your sore hands, and get back to it. The plow sinks again, carving another line. Step by step, furrow by furrow, the field transforms from flat crust into a pattern of ridges and valleys ready for seed. Around you, other farmers work too. You hear their shouts, the groan of their beasts, the thud of hooves in the soil. One man's plow breaks with a sharp crack, and he curses loudly, throwing the handle down. Another laughs and offers to lend him his spare blade, for a price, of course. You chuckle, shaking your head. Even in the middle of toil, business never stops. Your arms burn, your back aches, and still you push on. Farming is a test of endurance, not speed. You've learned to pace yourself, to breathe steadily, to let the oxen do the heavy pulling while you guide. But the soil is stubborn today, clinging like clay always does after a damp night. You groan, muttering to yourself that maybe the scribes should come try this before telling you which days are favorable. Historians still argue whether Sumerian plows were efficient innovations or crude stopgaps. Some claim they revolutionized farming, while others point out they were heavy, awkward, and broke often. You don't need a historian to tell you the truth. You feel it in your shoulders. The plow is both blessing and curse. Without it, your harvest would be pitiful. With it, your muscles scream for mercy. At last, you stop for a moment, wiping your face again. The sun is higher now, glaring down mercilessly. Your son sits in the shade of a reed shelter you built at the edge of the field, sipping from a small jug of water. He waves at you, grinning. You shake your head, smile despite yourself, and return to the plow. The oxen pull forward, steady and relentless, and you follow, carving the earth into order. Furrow by furrow, the field begins to look ready for life. Lines of soil waiting for the seeds you'll scatter later. And though your arms throb and your back protests, you can't help but feel a flicker of pride. This is the work that keeps your family alive, the work that binds you to the land, the work that someday your son will curse just as much as you do. For now, though, you lean into the plow again, grit your teeth, and keep moving, because in Sumer, the soil waits for no one. The field stretches before you now, rows of freshly carved furrows lying open like pages waiting for ink. The plow rests nearby, its wooden tip darkened from the damp soil, while the oxen munch lazily on a bundle of reeds you toss to them as a reward. Their tails flick in slow rhythm, swatting flies, perfectly content while you wipe sweat from your forehead and prepare for the next task. Plowing breaks the earth, but planting is what promises a future. You grab a sack of seed grain from the shaded reed shelter. It's heavy, bulging against the woven fibers, filled with barley kernels dried carefully after last year's harvest. Every handful you scatter today is both an investment and a gamble. Too shallow, and the birds will feast before the shoots appear. Too deep, and the seedlings will never see sunlight. Somewhere between those extremes lies survival. You sling the sack across your shoulder, take a step into the furrows, and begin. Your hand dips into the bag, scattering seed with an easy flick of the wrist. The kernels arc through the air, landing with tiny patters against the soil, bouncing once or twice before settling. The rhythm quickly takes over. Step, scatter. Step, scatter. Your son trots behind you, grinning, copying your motion with his smaller sack of seed. Of course, half his kernels land in clumps, 2 handfuls in one spot, none in the next. You sigh but let him continue. Practice makes perfect. Besides, the birds will probably correct his mistakes soon enough. Above, a hawk circles lazily, riding the warm updrafts. You narrow your eyes at it. Hawks don't eat barley. True. But where there are hawks, there are flocks of smaller birds ready to descend on your seeds the moment you turn your back. Sure enough, a scatter of sparrows hops along the edge of the field, watching greedily. You stoop, grab a clod of dirt, and toss it their way. They scatter, chirping indignantly, only to regroup a few feet farther down. You mutter, "Greedy little scholars of free lunch." It's a mainstream fact fought constantly against pests. Birds, locusts, even mice could devastate a field before the seedlings had a chance. Temples employed whole squads of boys to clap reeds together, making noise to scare away flocks. Some families kept cats, small, scrappy animals brought in from Egypt and tamed just enough to keep rodents in check. Yours, sadly, prefers sleeping in the granary to chasing anything. You keep walking, scattering more grain. The sun presses down on your back now, hot and insistent. Sweat drips from your brow into the soil. The smell of earth lingers in your nose, damp, fertile, slightly sour. Somewhere nearby, a frog croaks from the canal, as if blessing the work. You pause to stretch, rolling your shoulders. Your hands are already raw from plow handles, and now the constant motion of seeding adds a dull ache. You flex your fingers, shake them out, then keep moving. Your son skips ahead, flinging a whole handful of barley into the air like confetti. The kernels rain down in a messy pile. You groan, stomp over, and scoop some back into your sack. "If you keep feeding the sparrows like that," you mutter, "we'll be eating reeds for dinner." He laughs, unbothered, and sprints off again. You glance toward the canal, checking its level. Enough water lingers that once the seedlings sprout, you'll be able to draw irrigation ditches easily. That's the next big step, but for now, the priority is just getting these seeds into the soil. You kneel, press a clump of earth over a handful you scattered too shallow, patting it firm. The soil is warm and soft beneath your palm, comforting in its way. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some farmers swear by chanting softly while scattering seed, claiming the rhythm of words helps the barley take root. Your neighbor even insists certain phrases encourage faster growth, like telling the soil bedtime stories, but for plants. You've never noticed a difference, but sometimes you hum under your breath anyway. If nothing else, it keeps your mind steady, your movements even. And who knows, maybe barley likes lullabies. You work steadily across the field, the rows filling with scattered life. The oxen lift their heads occasionally to watch you, chewing in their slow, judgmental way. You point at them and joke, "If this harvest fails, I'm blaming you two." They blink, unimpressed. It's hard not to think about how fragile all of this is. One flood too strong, one drought too long, one swarm of insects, and all this careful scattering becomes wasted effort. You remember stories from just a few years back when the river stayed low all season and half the village went hungry. Historians still argue whether those droughts were natural or worsened by deforestation upstream. You just know that your belly ached that year and your children cried at night from hunger. The memory makes you scatter the grain more carefully, more prayerfully. Step, scatter, pat. Step, scatter, pat. The rhythm slows your thoughts, lulls you almost into a trance. The field begins to look different. Furrows darkened by seed, ridges lined with the promise of green shoots. From above, if anyone were flying like that hawk, the pattern would look neat, geometric, human-made against the wide floodplain. Civilization carved into dirt. A breeze rises, cool against your sweaty skin, carrying the smell of reeds and river water. It rustles through your tunic, whispering faint encouragement. For a moment, you close your eyes and imagine the barley already tall, swaying in this same wind. The thought steadies you. By midday, the sack grows lighter. Your shoulder aches from carrying it, your palm rough from reaching in over and over. The sun blazes, merciless, turning your tunic damp and sticky. You whistle sharply, and your son trots back, dust cloud rising behind him. Together you finish the last furrows, scattering the last handfuls, patting down the last clumps of soil. Then you both collapse onto the reed shelter's shade, panting, chests heaving. The oxen snort in the background, finished with their reeds and eyeing you as if to ask whether the work is finally over. You grin at your son, flicking a kernel from his hair. He laughs, curls up beside you, and promptly dozes off, his cheek smudged with dust. You stretch out your sore arms, gaze at the wide, seeded field, and allow yourself a small smile. The hard part, plowing and sowing, is done for now. Ahead lies irrigation, weeding, guarding, harvesting. But for this moment at least, you can breathe, watch the sparrows circle overhead, and dream of the green shoots that will soon poke through the soil like promises kept. The field lies behind you now, seated and silent, but your work isn't finished, far from it. If sowing is a promise, irrigation is the oath you swear to keep it. Without water, the barley never breaks through the soil. And in Sumer, water isn't a gentle rain falling from the sky whenever you'd like. No, the heavens here are stingy, offering only a handful of storms each year. The real water flows through the veins of the land, the Tigris and Euphrates, and the canals men like you carve into the earth. You shoulder a shovel, rough-handled and worn smooth where countless palms have gripped it, and trudge toward the canal that runs along the field's edge. The oxen are tied up for rest, chewing cud and looking smug. Your son follows, carrying a smaller reed scoop, eager to help, though you know you'll end up fixing his crooked channels later. Still, better crooked water than none at all. The canal gleams faintly, carrying water the color of milk tea, thick with silt from upstream. Frogs croak along its banks, leaping away as you approach. Reeds sway in the breeze, whispering secrets about fish and insects hidden within. You crouch at the edge, dip your hand in, and feel the cool current sliding past your fingers. This is lifeblood, the river's gift. Without it, your barley is nothing but dry seed. You take your shovel and begin carving a narrow furrow from the canal into the field. The soil resists at first, clumping stubbornly, but soon the groove takes shape. Water trickles in, darkening the dirt, seeping along the channel you guide. Your son squeals in delight, splashing with his reed scope to help the flow along. You laugh, shaking your head. He looks more like he's playing at a festival game than feeding a crop. It's a mainstream fact. The genius of Sumer wasn't just cities or writing, it was irrigation. With canals and dikes, entire communities coaxed the rivers into service, taming floods and feeding fields. Without those watery highways, Uruk, and Lagash would never have risen from mud huts into bustling cities. Yet taming rivers is no simple matter. Water gives, but it also destroys. Too much in the wrong season and fields drown. Too little and they wither. You widen the channel with careful strokes, ensuring the water spreads evenly across the furrows. Too much flow and the soil erodes. Too little and patches remain dry. The art is balance, patience, watching how the earth drinks and adjusting the flow. You plug part of the ditch with a clod of clay, then open another farther down. Slowly, the field begins to darken in patches, soaking up the river's gift. Your son, impatient, tries to dig his own side channel. Predictably, the water rushes too fast, washing away a whole row of seed. You groan, wade over, and block it with your foot. He frowns, muttering, "But the water liked my road better." You chuckle, tousle his hair, and tell him, "The water likes to run wild. It's our job to teach it manners." A dragonfly hovers nearby, wings flashing like green glass in the sun. You watch it for a moment, distracted, then return to work. One quirky tidbit comes to mind. Some elders claim dragonflies are spirits of drowned ancestors, guiding the water to where it should flow. You've never decided whether that's comforting or unsettling. Either way, you don't argue with the insect. If it wants to bless your furrows, you'll take it. By midday, the field glistens with dampness. The soil shines dark, footprints sinking slightly where you step. The barley seeds lie hidden, soaking in their first drink. You straighten, stretch your back, and wipe the sweat streaming down your temples. The sun beats mercilessly above, turning the air into a shimmering haze. Your son collapses onto the bank, trailing his fingers in the canal, humming tunelessly. You sit beside him, watching the current. The water carries bits of reed, fragments of mud, even the occasional fish struggling to swim upstream. You wonder briefly where that fish will end up, perhaps flopping into some farmer's furrow by mistake. It wouldn't be the strangest thing. People still tell stories of tiny fish appearing in barley rows, carried there by floodwater. Historians still argue whether such tales are myth or proof of ancient aquaculture. You just prefer they ended up in your cooking pot. The sound of rushing water is hypnotic, soothing. For a moment, you let yourself drift, eyes half closed, imagining the field weeks from now. Tiny green shoots piercing the surface, stretching toward the sun, rustling in the breeze. That thought carries you through the aches in your arms, the mud on your legs, the endless fatigue of bending and digging. This is the reward. You're building tomorrow with every drop of water you guide today. A shadow passes overhead. You glance up to see a flock of ibises wheeling in the sky, their long beaks glinting. They're heading toward the marshes, no doubt, where water is always plentiful. For a brief, jealous moment, you wish you were a bird, free of shovels, furrows, and aching muscles. But then you remember, birds don't brew beer. Advantage, human. Afternoon stretches on, you adjust the dikes again, closing one, opening another, careful to share the water equally across the whole plot. Neighbors appear along their own canals, some cursing when the flow runs thin, others waving in triumph when theirs overflows. A few disputes break out, accusations that one family stole more water than allotted. You pretend not to hear, though you know tomorrow the elders will probably gather to scold the guilty. Water, after all, is wealth, and wealth, even in mud, inspires quarrels. By the time you finish, your field looks different, darkened, damp, alive with the promise of growth. The oxen low softly in the distance, sensing the end of labor. You sit once more on the bank, splash cool water onto your face, and drink deeply from a jug. The taste is earthy, slightly gritty, but refreshing nonetheless. Your son slurps noisily beside you, dribbling down his chin. You laugh, wipe his mouth, and lean back, letting the breeze dry your skin. The day's work is only half done, but for now, the seeds are fed, the soil is satisfied, and the river's voice murmurs approval in your ears. You close your eyes briefly, letting the sound lull you. Water, Soil, sun, the eternal triangle of Sumer. You've done your part to keep the balance, at least for today. Tomorrow will bring weeds, birds, quarrels, and more sweat. But tonight, when you finally lie down, you'll remember the shimmer of damp furrows in the sun, and the way the water obeyed your hand, if only for a little while. The sun has climbed higher, and the field hums quietly with latent energy, the barley seeds drinking in every drop of the canal water. Your son dozes under the reed shelter, a fine layer of dust and sweat covering his small frame, and even the oxen have retreated to the shade near the pen, tails flicking lazily as if they too understand the pause between labors. You stand at the edge of the field, surveying your work with a quiet pride. Each furrow, each seed is a tiny triumph, though your arms and back protest in no uncertain terms. It's time to turn your attention to another crucial task, fertilizing the field. Sumerian farmers don't rely solely on water and seed. The soil demands nutrients, and manure is the magic dust that keeps the land productive. You fetch a small pile from the storage heap, mostly cow and ox dung mixed with straw. The smell is strong, earthy, and slightly sour, the kind of odor that makes newcomers wrinkle their noses. You, however, inhale deeply, a ritual of reassurance. This is life. This is growth. You scatter the manure carefully along the furrows, mixing it lightly with your hands and a small rake. The scent of the soil rises, richer now, promising fertility and protection against the cruel sting of a poor harvest. Your son stirs, blinking at the pungent aroma. "It smells alive," he says softly. You nod, patting the mixture down with your hands. Exactly. That's how the land talks back to us. Historians still argue whether Sumerians fully understood nutrient cycles, or whether they relied mostly on observation and inherited practice. For you, the science is less abstract and more visceral. You've seen fields treated with care thrive year after year, while neglected plots shrivel under the sun or wash away in floods. You trust your instincts, but the knowledge passed down from father to son, scribe to farmer, is invaluable. A curious fact drifts into your mind. Some families reportedly used small fish, mashed and mixed with the soil, as a fertilizer for particularly stubborn patches. The idea makes you wrinkle your nose, though you suspect it worked surprisingly well. You imagine tossing a small carp into a furrow, the seeds sprouting faster while the family dog looks on in confusion. You shake your head and decide that cow and ox dung, though less exotic, will suffice for today. The breeze rises again, carrying the smell of river silt and distant cooking fires. You pause, leaning on your rake, and notice a neighbor walking along the edge of their field. They nod at you, calling out that the water flow is steady, the barley likely to thrive. You nod back, acknowledging their approval without speaking. Words are secondary here. The land communicates in texture, in moisture, in the slow bending of stalks. Your son climbs to his feet, brushing dust from his tunic. He tries to lift the rake with you, but the weight is more than he can manage. You hand him a small bundle of straw to scatter along the edges, turning it into a game. He runs down the furrows, tossing it like confetti, laughing with abandon. You can't help but smile, watching him turn labor into play, a fleeting moment before he's tethered to responsibility like the rest of us. Meanwhile, the oxen shift in the shade, eyes half closed. They occasionally flick a fly from their flanks, but otherwise remain indifferent to your ministrations. You glance at them and mutter, "If only you two could handle weeds too." A low grunt comes in response, or maybe it's a coincidence, but you take it as agreement. As you work, the sun climbs relentlessly, turning the field into a shimmer of heat. Sweat runs down your back, mixing with the dust clinging to your skin. Still, your movements are steady, rhythmic. Rake, pat, scatter, repeat. The labor is quiet now, almost meditative, the kind that makes the minutes stretch into hours without notice. You think of the generations of farmers who have stood in this same sun, hands in the same soil, knowing that survival depends on diligence and patience. Quirky rumors you've heard over the years float through your mind. One elder swore that certain sections of the field respond better if you talk to them while fertilizing. An incantation, or maybe just superstition, but you mumble softly anyway. The words are nonsense, really, but they keep your rhythm consistent and your mind focused. Perhaps you think the barley enjoys a little attention. By late morning, the furrows are covered, the soil enriched, and ready to rest briefly before the next phase of tending. You step back, wiping your hands on your tunic, and take a long, satisfying look at the land. It's a patchwork of brown lines, damp soil, and earthy richness, waiting for green life to push through. You feel a moment of quiet triumph. The barley will grow if the river behaves, if the sun is kind, if the birds don't get greedy. And even if it doesn't, you've done your part. The sound of a distant bell reaches your ears, the temple calling for midday offerings, or perhaps just a reminder of the city's pulse beyond the fields. The rhythm of life continues, but for now, you can linger in the quiet of your labor. The wind carries the soft croaks of frogs, the rustle of reeds, and the occasional whistle of a hawk circling above. It's a soundtrack of Sumer itself, blending the natural world with human toil. You crouch beside a furrow, pressing a small handful of soil between your fingers, feeling the warmth, the moisture, the fertility. This is a tactile connection to survival, to history, to the generations before you who tilled the same land, faced the same floods, and depended on the same stubborn river. Historians still argue whether Sumerian farmers saw themselves as mere laborers or as stewards of the land. You know, without any debate, that you are both. Finally, you stretch, letting your shoulders loosen, muscles releasing after hours of bending and scattering. The oxen shift again, lowing softly, and your sun settles back in the shade. You stand fully upright, surveying the field once more. Rows of furrows, enriched with soil, glistening slightly with irrigation water. This is your craft, your labor, your legacy. A quiet satisfaction settles in your chest, tempered by the awareness that this is just the middle of the season. The barley will need attention, weeds will creep in, pests will attempt their thefts, and the river will demand careful management. Yet for this hour, the work is done. The field waits, patient and silent, ready for what comes next. The midday sun climbs higher, casting short, sharp shadows across your neatly furrowed field. Your son has dozed off again, sprawled across the reed shelter, and even the oxen are now languid, heads low, chewing cud with quiet indifference. The air is thick with the smell of warm soil, sun-baked reeds, and the faint tang of the canal water. You take a deep breath, letting the scents settle in your lungs. It's the smell of life, of labor, of the endless cycle that defines existence here in Sumer. You stretch your aching back and glance at the plow resting against the edge of the field. It will need attention again soon. The wooden blade is sturdy, but the sun cracks everything over time, and the handles bear the scars of countless hours. Tools are extensions of the body here, as necessary as hands or arms, and neglecting them can turn a small inconvenience into a season-ending disaster. You run your fingers along the polished wood, checking for splits, and nod. It should hold for now. Today, though, it's time to consider another layer of the field's needs: weeds. They're quiet, insidious, and often overlooked until they strangle young shoots. You kneel beside a row, examining the soil. Tiny green sprouts, barley perhaps, or maybe something unwanted. It's hard to tell in the early stages. Your hands brush against the tender shoots as you carefully pluck any intruders, discarding them into a pile at the field's edge. Weeding is repetitive, almost meditative. Your back aches, fingers ache, but there's a rhythm to it. Spot the intruder, remove, place aside, move to the next. The field becomes a living puzzle, each section demanding attention. One misplaced weed can spread quickly if ignored, stealing water and nutrients. Your eyes scan continuously, and you bend, kneel, stretch, and sometimes groan under the sun's relentless gaze. A curious fact enters your thoughts. Sumerians often used shallow flooding as a secondary way to control weeds, letting the water drown young plants that weren't the barley you planted. Ingenious and messy in equal measure. You can almost imagine some farmer centuries later describing it to a scribe. "We drowned the wrong children of the earth." You chuckle softly at the mental image, though your hands remain busy. Your son, now awake, toddles beside you, plucking weeds here and there. He drops more than he removes, but the effort is endearing. You glance at him, brushing dust from his tunic. "Better than nothing," you say, smiling. He beams, clearly proud to have a role, however small, in tending the field. You feel a flicker of warmth in your chest. Pride, yes, but also the comforting weight of continuity. You are teaching him not just farming, but patience, attention, and the rhythm of life itself. The oxen shift in the background, lowing softly, restless after their short rest. You glance up, imagining the next phase, perhaps plowing another strip or dragging a harrow to aerate the soil further. But for now, the weeds take priority. The repetition, though exhausting, becomes hypnotic. Step forward, kneel, pluck, place, repeat. Your mind wanders gently, dreaming of green fields, growing barley, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from shaping the land with your own hands. Some quirky tidbit crosses your mind. Some farmers whisper that weeds have personalities, mischievous spirits that enjoy growing in forbidden rows or mocking the farmer who planted barley. You scoff softly. Perhaps they do, but if so, your hands are faster than their mischief. You tug another stubborn sprout from the soil and toss it into the pile. Take that, impish greenery. Historians still argue whether Sumerian farmers viewed weeds strictly as nuisance plants or whether some might have had ceremonial or medicinal value. To you, the weeds are a battle, not philosophy. Yet occasionally, you glance at a stubborn sprig and wonder, maybe it's not entirely useless. Maybe one day someone will use it for healing or dye. Perhaps even the sparrows eat them in secret, savoring the taste you don't. The sun climbs even higher, now blazing in a cloudless sky. Sweat drips from your temples, streaking the dust on your cheeks. You pause, wiping your face with a sleeve, and glance across the field. Rows of barley seedlings stand straight, darkened by the morning irrigation, punctuated by occasional gaps and misaligned sprouts. The work is endless, yes, but there's undeniable satisfaction in shaping life out of earth, water, and labor. Your son calls out suddenly, holding up a particularly thick sprout. "Baba, is this one barley?" You peer closely. "Not yet," you reply, smiling. "It's a sneaky weed pretending to be family. We must be careful." He frowns, examines it seriously, then nods, accepting the judgment. Teaching moments come in strange forms out here, often between sweat, dirt, and laughter. Hours pass in this rhythm. Step, bend, pluck, place, glance at the sun, repeat. Birds call from the canal edges, a frog leaps, and the occasional breeze lifts dust into shimmering swirls. The field hums with subtle life, the promise of harvest hidden beneath the brown and green surface. You glance at the oxen again. Their eyes follow you lazily, ears flicking, tail swishing. They have no concept of weeds, only that you disturb their rest. You mutter, "One day you'll understand the importance of tiny intruders," but they ignore you. Finally, you stand upright, stretch your arms high, and take in the field in its entirety. Rows are largely cleared, the weeds diminished, and the barley seedlings free to grow in peace, for now. Your hands ache, your back protests, your shoulders feel the burn from hours of labor, but the work is visible, tangible. You inhale deeply, smelling earth, sweat, water, and sun-warmed reeds. This is life, rough and demanding, yet quiet and fulfilling in its own relentless way. The day continues to blaze, but a subtle satisfaction hums in your chest. The field is tended, the seedlings are safe, and the rhythm of work has lulled you into a meditative calm. There's pride in the labor, joy in small victories, and a quiet humor in the endless stubbornness of both earth and oxen. You crouch once more, letting your hands brush over the dark soil, feeling the warmth and weight of it. The barley is yours for now, fragile but alive, guided by every careful action of your hands and your mind. This is the heartbeat of civilization, small, patient, and unwavering. One season, one furrow, one seed at a time. The afternoon sun begins its slow descent, softening the glare, but not lessening the heat that presses against your shoulders and back. The field, now cleared of most weeds, shimmers under the lingering warmth. Each furrow a promise of life hidden just beneath the soil. Your hands are streaked with dirt, palms raw from hours of work. Yet the rhythm of labor has settled into a sort of meditative pulse. You breathe in the sense of fertile earth, river water, and distant cooking fires mingling into a familiar, grounding aroma. It's time to check the irrigation once more. Water is fickle, and even the careful channels you carved earlier can betray you with seepage or overflow. You grab your small reed scoop and head toward the first channel, careful to step lightly on the damp soil. The oxen watch lazily from the shade near the pen, their tails flicking, occasionally slapping the dust into your path. You mutter under your breath, a soft warning. Not today, boys. Stay put. The first channel holds steady, the water flowing evenly along the furrowed lines. You kneel, adjusting a tiny blockage here, smoothing a small mound there, ensuring the moisture reaches each seed without drowning it. One errant clump of dirt threatens to redirect the flow, and you chuckle softly, flicking it aside. Patience, you remind yourself. The river demands it. Your son trails behind, carrying a small jug of water and attempting to sprinkle it in spots where the canal's reach is weakest. His technique is less than precise. Droplets land more on his tunic than in the furrows, but you let him continue. There's value in participation, even if the results are imperfect. You tap the jug gently with your fingers, correcting the occasional overpour, guiding him without overt instruction. A curious fact drifts through your mind. Some Sumerian farmers decorated their irrigation dikes with small clay figurines, believing they would protect the channels from mischief spirits or floods. You've never indulged in such superstition, but you smile at the notion, imagining tiny clay guardians standing watch while the river flows obediently. Maybe it works in its own mysterious way. You pause for a moment, kneeling beside the water, letting your fingers trail through the shallow current. The cool liquid snakes around your hand, slick with fine sediment, and you marvel quietly at the flow itself, steady, patient, capable of sustaining life and destroying it with equal ease. Historians still argue whether Sumerians saw rivers purely as tools or as divine entities demanding respect. You've no doubt it's a little of both, a godlike power measured in mud, clay, and careful attention. Across the field, birds hop along the edges of the furrows, eyeing the barley seeds with opportunistic interest. Sparrows, doves, even a cheeky ibis daring to dip its long beak toward the edge of a channel. You wave your hand, swatting gently at the air, hoping to scare them without too much fuss. The river hums quietly, water trickling over the edges, and the birds retreat momentarily, giving the seedlings a chance to drink undisturbed. Your son drops his jug finally, panting from the effort. "Baba, I helped!" he exclaims, chest rising and falling rapidly. You ruffle his hair, smiling through your own fatigue. "You did, and the barley thanks you, I think." He grins, satisfied, and flops onto the bank, exhausted but proud. Children, you think, are always energized by purpose, even when the work is heavy. They don't yet know the stubbornness of soil or the long patience required to feed a family, but they will. You rise to your feet and stretch your back, feeling the ache in muscles that have not paused all day. It's the familiar burn of honest labor, one you wouldn't trade, yet one that commands respect. The sun has lowered slightly, gilding the horizon with streaks of gold and orange. Shadows lengthen across the furrows, making the field look almost magical. Lines of dark earth glowing faintly in the fading light. One quirky notion floats through your mind. Some farmers claim that certain types of water, drawn from different parts of the river, improve growth. Water from the north, they say, makes barley taller. From the south, it strengthens roots. You've never tested it, but it amuses you to think the river has preferences. Maybe it's true. After all, water can be as fickle as a mischievous child. You begin a slow walk along the furrows, checking each irrigation channel, adjusting small leaks, smoothing rough edges. Your hands work almost automatically, guided by years of experience. The oxen shift occasionally, lifting heads lazily, ears flicking at the sounds of moving water. You glance at them, muttering softly, "One day you'll pull plows for me again, but for now, enjoy your shade." One of them snorts, as if in reply. Historians still argue whether Sumerian farmers relied more on intuition or formal instruction in managing water flow. You know the answer lies somewhere in between. Tradition passed down through family, careful observation, and a willingness to listen to the river itself. You've learned to read the soil, the moisture, the plants, and yes, even the subtle mood of your oxen. It's a delicate balance, demanding patience, attention, and a fair bit of stubbornness. By mid-afternoon, the irrigation system hums steadily. Water trickles along every furrow, glistening faintly in the slanting sun. The seedlings drink deeply, their first meal of the season, and you allow yourself a moment to rest, leaning on your shovel. The field is alive with quiet energy, the hum of life hidden beneath the surface, waiting to burst into visible green. You sit for a long while, simply observing. The river whispers, the wind rustles the reeds, birds hop at the edges, and the oxen chew contentedly in the shade. It's a moment of stillness, rare in the midst of labor, but one you cherish. The work is never done, yet there is a profound satisfaction in what has been accomplished today. The barley is planted, the soil nourished, the water flowing. A low laugh escapes you as you remember an old neighbor's tale, that if you talk gently to the river while opening the channels, it flows more obediently. You murmur a few nonsense words along the furrows, more for your amusement than belief. Still, the water seems to respond. sliding smoothly along each line. Perhaps it listens after all. Finally, you stand, brushing dirt from your tunic. Your son yawns, stretched out across the reed shelter, eyes half closed. The oxen shift lazily, readying themselves for the return to the pen. You take one last look at the field. Rows of dark, irrigated soil, seedlings hidden beneath, channels carrying life with precise determination. You know the coming days will demand vigilance, more irrigation, watching for pests, tending weeds, but for now, the field rests in quiet balance. The late afternoon light slants across your field now, softening the sharp edges of the furrows and turning the wet soil into a gentle sheen of brown. The barley seedlings, hidden for the moment beneath the surface, soak in the carefully managed water, drawing nutrients from the enriched earth. You stand at the edge of the field, hands on your hips, surveying your labor with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. The oxen lie in the shade nearby, tails flicking lazily, occasionally swishing dust in your direction. Your son has drifted into a half-sleep under the reed shelter, muttering in his dreams about imaginary birds stealing seeds. It's time to consider protecting your fledgling crop. Birds, rodents, and even the occasional wandering animal are persistent thieves, and young barley is an irresistible snack. You grab a small bundle of reeds and start constructing a low fence along the field's edges, weaving the flexible stems into a lattice that will discourage the most opportunistic feeders. The work is repetitive but meditative. Grab, bend, thread, tighten, step back, repeat. The field is yours for now, but vigilance is key. A curious fact drifts through your thoughts. Some farmers used clay figurines atop the reed fences, thinking they would ward off mischief spirits or unlucky birds. You don't indulge in superstition often, but a small figurine of a seated figure might be amusing atop the corner post. Your son, noticing your hesitation, grins and suggests a tiny soldier figurine to guard the barley. You chuckle, allowing him to place it there, a sentinel against imagined threats. The oxen lift their heads at the sound of weaving reeds, lowing softly. One flicks an ear, then returns to chewing cud, as if saying, "Very well, we'll let you work." You mutter softly, imagining their inner monologue. These humans are never done, are they? You shake your head, smiling despite the ache in your back and arms. Life with oxen is both comforting and subtly mocking, a relationship of trust and mild exasperation. Historians still argue whether Sumerian farmers relied on ritual or practical techniques for crop protection. Some claim the figurines were purely symbolic. Others argue they were intended to physically deter pests. You are somewhere in between. The fence keeps the majority of birds out, and if a figurine wards off misfortune, all the better. Efficiency and superstition, you think, often go hand in hand in farming. You check each corner of the field, tightening the lattice where it sags, ensuring the water channels are unobstructed, and examining the soil for new weeds. Some intruders have already taken root, tiny green sprouts masquerading as barley. You kneel, plucking them gently, placing them in the dirt pile at the edge. Step by step, the field becomes orderly again, a balance between nurture and vigilance. Your son takes an interest in the irrigation channels again, dipping his fingers in the water and tracing the flow. You watch him carefully, guiding his small hands, ensuring he doesn't disrupt the delicate paths of water you set earlier. Patience, you murmur. The river teaches more than just wet soil. It teaches timing, balance, and the value of attention. He nods solemnly, though his attention wavers as a lizard darts across the bank, disappearing into the reeds. You take a brief rest, sitting on the soft earth, and let your gaze wander over the field. Shadows deepen in the furrows, creating a patchwork of light and dark. The wind whispers through the reeds, carrying distant calls of birds and the faint murmur of water moving through channels. You inhale deeply, tasting dust, earth, and river mist on your tongue. These moments are fleeting, but they are the heartbeat of life here, the pause between effort and reward, the quiet acknowledgement that the land responds to care. A quirky idea floats to mind. Some farmers claim that talking to the barley while tending it helps growth. You scoff gently, but hum a few nonsense words as you move along the fence line, weaving the last of the reeds. Maybe it's foolishness, or maybe it keeps your hands moving rhythmically. Either way, the barley seems no worse for it. Your son giggles at your humming, joining in with his own small melody. Step back, glance at the field, admire the pattern of furrows, the shine of damp soil, the careful lattice of protection. Each seed planted, each channel dug, each weed removed, every ounce of sweat spent. This is the culmination of your day's work. And yet, there's more to do tomorrow. Checking channels, patching the fence, perhaps even a round of pest inspection. Farming is relentless, demanding, but also profoundly satisfying. Historians still argue whether the Sumerian reliance on canals and fences shaped social organization more than the crops themselves. As you watch your son imitate your movements, weaving small reeds into imaginary barriers, you realize the lesson extends beyond agriculture. Discipline, patience, observation, and care are the real harvests of a day in the field. Finally, you stand, stretch your back, and take a deep breath. The field glows in the late afternoon sun, every furrow in its place, channels carrying life-sustaining water, fences standing guard, and seedlings safe from immediate threat. You glance at your son, who waves a tiny reed at you, proud of his contribution, and you wave back. The oxen shift, readying themselves for a slow return to the pen. You nod to them, acknowledging the quiet partnership you share. The day has been long. Your body is exhausted, but there is satisfaction in every ache, every smear of mud, every careful adjustment made in the field. You know the barley will grow if the skies are kind and the river flows, and if not, you will meet the challenge again. This is the rhythm of life. Sow, water, guard, tend, repeat, and in every step, leave your mark on the earth, however small. The late afternoon sun continues its slow descent, casting a golden glow over your field. Shadows stretch long across the furrows, and the damp earth reflects the warm light, darkened with life and promise. You stand at the edge of the field, wiping the sweat and dust from your brow, surveying your labor. The barley seedlings are now fully soaked from the earlier irrigation, enriched with the manure you scattered, and for the moment, the weeds have been subdued. The lattice fence you built humbly guards the edges, and you can almost imagine tiny clay soldiers standing sentinel at the corners. Your son has dozed again under the reed shelter, exhausted from his day's help, though a faint smile lingers on his lips as he dreams. The oxen lie nearby, chewing cud, tails flicking in rhythm with the breeze. It's quiet now, save for the soft murmur of the canal water and the occasional bird calling from the marshes. You take a deep breath, letting the scents of river silt, earth, and distant cooking fires fill your senses. For a fleeting moment, you can pretend the world has paused, that nothing exists beyond this small patch of life you have coaxed from the soil. But the day is not over yet. The barley must be tended, and one of the most crucial tasks remains: guarding the seedlings against pests and the unpredictable whims of nature. You retrieve a small basket of repurposed reeds and set about making makeshift scare devices. Simple, crude by any standard, but they work if placed carefully. A few dangling reeds that catch the wind, a small clay figurine here and there, perhaps a string of tiny bones or shells that rattle when a breeze moves through them. The field becomes dotted with these small guardians, a patchwork of motion and noise designed to keep hungry eyes away. Historians still argue whether these methods were primarily practical or symbolic. Some believe Sumerian farmers relied on these devices because superstition reinforced diligence, ensuring that every inch of the field received attention. Others insist the motion and noise genuinely deterred birds and animals. You don't need to settle the debate. You've seen them work, at least enough to keep the majority of sparrows and doves at bay. You crouch to inspect a furrow, brushing soil away from a few seedlings to ensure they aren't smothered by residual clumps of dirt or stray weeds. Your fingers are sticky with mud, warm from the afternoon sun, and you flex them gently to relieve the tension. The tactile sensation is comforting, grounding. Every furrow you touch, every seed you check, every protective reed you plant is a small act of stewardship. You guide life with patient hands, and the soil responds, receptive yet demanding. A quirky tidbit enters your mind. Some families claim that hanging shiny bits of pottery on fences or dangling reeds attracts water spirits to the field. It seems fanciful, yet a sudden glint in the sun catches your eye from a broken shard at the fence's edge, and you chuckle. Perhaps it works. Or perhaps it's just another reason for you to notice every detail of your field. Either way, the barley benefits from your attention, and that's what matters. Your son stirs, blinking sleepily, and wanders over to inspect one of the small scare devices. He pokes at a dangling reed, then laughs when it twirls in the wind, rattling softly. "Baba, it's alive!" he exclaims, eyes wide. You smile, crouching beside him to adjust it so it spins more freely. "Alive enough to scare the birds, I hope," you reply. He nods solemnly, understanding in his own childlike way that life is a delicate balance between work and wonder. The oxen shift, rising slowly to their feet, stretching their legs and flicking tails to chase flies. You mutter softly, half to yourself, half to them. Your turn soon, but for now, watch and rest. One of them snorts, as if in reply, and settles back down again. They are reliable companions, steady, if occasionally obstinate, and their presence is a comfort in the long hours of toil. You take a slow walk along the furrows, inspecting each channel of water, each ridge of soil, each tiny green shoot breaking the surface. The sun, now lower in the sky, casts long shadows that make the field appear to ripple with life. You pause occasionally, letting the breeze cool your sun-warmed skin, listening to the soft rustle of reeds, the distant murmur of the river, and the occasional croak of a frog hiding in the canal. These small sounds, mundane and persistent, are the soundtrack of your labor, the gentle rhythm of life in Sumer. A mainstream fact floats into your thoughts. The Sumerians were meticulous observers of their environment, relying on careful record-keeping, observation, and inherited knowledge to maintain their fields. From the placement of canals to the timing of irrigation and the scattering of seed, every action was deliberate. And while modern scholars debate whether this arose from necessity or ingenuity, you know that in practice it is both. You rely on precision, instinct, and patience in equal measure. Your hands ache from the repetitive motions, but your mind is alert, observing patterns, predicting trouble spots, and making adjustments as needed. Step, check, adjust, repeat. There's a quiet satisfaction in this repetition, a meditative quality to bending low, feeling the soil, and guiding life one careful movement at a time. You glance down at a tiny barley sprout just breaking the surface and smile. It's small, almost imperceptible, yet it is a triumph, proof that your labor has taken root, literally and figuratively. Historians still argue whether Sumerian farmers considered themselves stewards of the land or simply servants of necessity. You think it is both, a dual responsibility, to feed your family and to respect the life that grows beneath your hands. Each adjustment to a furrow, each scare device placed, Each careful inspection of seedlings is a small conversation with the land itself. The soil responds, the water flows, and the barley, hidden but thriving, rewards your attentiveness. The breeze picks up again, stirring the reeds and rattling your makeshift scare devices. You pause, listening to the subtle clatter, imagining the tiny guardians shaking in the wind. Birds eye the field from a distance, hesitant to intrude, while the seedlings drink deeply in the fading warmth. You take a slow, deep breath, feeling the ache of labor in your arms, back, and legs, but also the quiet satisfaction of work well done. Your son yawns, stretching beside the reed shelter, eyes half-lidded. You stand, brushing dust from your tunic, and glance once more across the field. Furrows lie neat and dark. Water trickles steadily. Seedlings are safe, and the lattice fence stands guard. The day's labor has left its mark, subtle but undeniable. The barley will grow if the elements remain kind, if pests are limited, and if tomorrow brings more of your careful attention. Step by step, furrow by furrow, you've guided life into the earth, coaxed water to flow, fended off mischief, and created the conditions for survival. This is the rhythm of Sumer, the heartbeat of human labor intertwined with the pulse of the land itself. You pause one last time, inhaling deeply, letting the sense of soil, river, and sun wash over you before settling into a slow, measured exhale. The sun has dipped lower now, softening the harsh glare of the afternoon into a warm, golden haze. Shadows stretch lazily across the furrows, long and slender, as if the earth itself is reaching to embrace the fading light. You stand at the edge of the field, surveying the labor of the day with quiet satisfaction. The barley seedlings are safe, the irrigation channels flowing steadily, and the lattice fence stands firm against potential intruders. Even the small clay and reed guardians seem to glow in the slanting sunlight, their silent watchfulness adding a sense of calm to the field. Your son stirs again, blinking sleepily at the warm glow and the gentle breeze. He stands and wanders toward one of the irrigation channels, dipping his fingers in the cool water and letting droplets spill over his hands. You watch him for a moment, smiling softly. Children have an uncanny ability to find wonder in the smallest details, and in his hands, the river is both a toy and a teacher. You kneel beside him, guiding his small movements to ensure he doesn't disrupt the delicate flow. Patience, you murmur. The water teaches more than just wet soil. It teaches balance, timing, and the value of care. The oxen, now fully awake, stretch their legs and shift in the shade. Their steady presence is reassuring, a reminder of the quiet partnership between human and animal in the rhythms of farm life. You mutter softly, half to them and half to yourself. One day soon, you'll pull the plow again, but for now, rest. One of them snorts, as if acknowledging your words, then settles back down with a flick of its tail. You return to the furrows, inspecting the irrigation channels, checking the soil, and adjusting small obstructions. The water trickles smoothly along the lines, nourishing the barley seeds hidden beneath the surface. Your hands are sticky with mud, warmed by the sun, and you flex your fingers gently to relieve the tension. There is a comforting rhythm in the repetitive motions. Bend, check, adjust, move along. Each careful adjustment is a dialogue with the land, an acknowledgement of its needs and limits. A quirky thought crosses your mind that certain sections of the field grow better when the wind blows in a particular direction. You laugh softly, imagining the barley negotiating with the breeze over how tall it should grow. Perhaps there is truth in it, or perhaps it is simply an excuse for meticulous observation. Either way, the seedlings are responding to your attention, and that is enough. Historians still debate whether Sumerian farmers relied more on superstition or observation, but you know that in practice, it is a blend of both. You've learned to read the soil, the water, and the plants, but a touch of ritual or whimsy never hurts. The small clay figures atop the fence, the gentle words murmured to the river, the humming as you walk along the furrows, they all form part of the careful orchestration that turns soil into sustenance. You crouch beside a young shoot, brushing away a tiny clump of dirt that threatens to smother it. The barley is tender but resilient, a fragile life held in check by your hands and guidance. Step by step, furrow by furrow, you've coaxed growth from the earth, and the satisfaction of seeing your labor bear fruit is profound. Each seed is a triumph, each furrow a testament to patience and care. Your son wanders along the edge of the field, inspecting the lattice fence. He pokes at a dangling reed, watching it twirl in the wind, and giggles. "It's alive, Baba!" he exclaims. You kneel beside him, adjusting the reed so it spins more freely. "Alive enough to scare the birds, I hope," you reply, smiling. The wind picks up, rattling the small guardians, and you can almost hear the tiny figures laughing with mischief. The field hums quietly with life. The subtle stirrings of seedlings beneath the soil, the gentle trickle of water, the rustle of reeds, and the distant calls of birds. It is a rhythm that lulls the mind, blending effort and observation into a seamless meditation. You walk slowly along the furrows, hands brushing over the warm soil, ensuring that every seed has space to grow and that every channel carries water evenly. A mainstream fact enters your thoughts. The Sumerians meticulously observed their environment, tracking rainfall, river flow, and soil conditions to maintain their fields. From canal placement to irrigation timing and soil enrichment, every action was deliberate. You rely on similar principles now, guided by experience, observation, and inherited knowledge. It is labor, yes, but it is also a form of communication with the land. By evening, the sun has softened to a gentle amber, casting a calming glow across the field. Shadows mingle with the warm light, creating a tapestry of dark and gold. You pause, taking in the sight. The neat furrows, the flowing water, the protective fence, and the hidden green shoots beneath the surface. There is satisfaction here, quiet but profound, in knowing that the seeds you planted, watered, and protected are now set on the path to life. Your son yawns and settles back under the reed shelter, exhausted but content. The oxen shift again, their tails flicking lazily. You take a deep breath, letting the cool evening air wash over your sweat-warmed skin. The day's labor has been long, your body aches, but there is an unmistakable joy in the quiet order you have created. The field rests in balance, a delicate ecosystem nurtured by patience, care, and steady attention. Historians still argue whether Sumerian farmers viewed themselves as stewards of the land or merely servants of necessity. You know it is both. You tend the earth to feed your family and, in doing so, cultivate a connection with the rhythms of life itself. Step by step, furrow by furrow, you have guided growth, balanced water, protected seedlings, and nurtured life. And in this moment, as the sun dips toward the horizon, you can feel the weight and beauty of that responsibility. The evening breeze picks up, rustling the reeds, rattling the small scare devices, and carrying the distant sound of village life. You pause one last time, walking slowly along the furrows, hands brushing over the warm soil, ensuring the irrigation channels remain steady. The barley will continue to grow under your care, and you will return tomorrow to tend it further. But for now, the field is calm. The water flows evenly, and the seedlings are safe. You allow yourself a moment of quiet satisfaction before moving toward the shelter to rest. The evening has settled fully now, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, melting into deep purples as night approaches. You stand at the edge of your field one last time, surveying the day's work. The furrows lie dark and damp, irrigation channels steady, barley seedlings hidden beneath the soil, and the protective lattice fence casting long, gentle shadows. Your son sleeps under the reed shelter, curled up with one hand draped over a small clay guardian, dreaming of birds and mischievous river spirits. Even the oxen have returned to their pen, tails flicking lazily as they settle for the night. You kneel beside a furrow, pressing your fingers into the warm earth. The soil has absorbed the day's water and nourishment, dark and fertile, ready to give life in return. You run your hands over the tiny ridges, feeling the texture of growth yet unseen, the pulse of potential beneath your fingertips. It is a quiet triumph, subtle yet profound, a small victory in the unending rhythm of seasons and toil. Your son stirs, blinking sleepily, and sits up, rubbing his eyes. "Baba, will it grow?" he asks, voice soft with the lingering edges of dreams. You smile, brushing dust from his tunic and tousling his hair. "Yes, little one," you reply gently, "it will grow. You've helped, the water has fed it, and the earth is ready." He nods, content, and leans back into the shelter, ready to drift again, while you rise to inspect the final irrigation lines. Water flows smoothly along each channel, shimmering faintly in the moonlight now creeping into the field. You adjust a few minor leaks, redirecting gentle currents to ensure every furrow receives its share. This attention to detail is what separates survival from struggle in Sumer. Historians still argue whether farmers measured water so precisely through inherited wisdom or trial and error. You know it is both, a careful blend of observation, experience, and an almost instinctual understanding of how life and water interact. You walk slowly along the furrows, hands brushing over the soil, checking for tiny intrusions of weeds or stray debris. Even in the soft glow of evening, the field speaks to you. The barley is resilient, but the work of keeping it safe, healthy, and nourished is never fully done. Every step, every adjustment, every careful observation strengthens the life that has been entrusted to you. Some farmers claim that whispering to the barley encourages stronger growth. You smile at the idea, kneeling beside a row and murmuring softly, almost instinctively. Your son stirs again, murmuring something dreamlike, and you laugh quietly. Perhaps it is nonsense, but it gives your hands rhythm, your mind calm, and the seedlings a little more attention than they would otherwise receive. The lattice fence hums faintly in the evening breeze, reeds twisting and swaying, clay guardians tilting just so. Birds have retreated to the distant marshes, deterred for now, and the river's voice is a gentle murmur beside the field. You take a deep breath, letting the sense of soil, water, and evening air fill your senses. These moments are fleeting, yet they anchor you, reminding you that labor and care yield life, and that every day's effort contributes to the slow, steady pulse of civilization. By now, the sky has darkened further, stars beginning to sparkle faintly overhead. The air is cooler, carrying whispers of distant fires and soft chirps from nocturnal creatures. You pause, kneeling beside a small patch of seedlings, brushing the soil lightly, ensuring nothing has shifted or eroded. Every action is a conversation with the earth, a promise made and kept. The barley, unseen but thriving, responds to your care with quiet resilience. Your son yawns and shifts beneath the shelter, murmuring in his sleep about birds, rivers, and mischievous spirits. You watch him for a moment, thinking of the cycle you are teaching him: patience, attention, care, and respect for the rhythms of life. He will learn soon enough that survival is woven through repetition, observation, and a touch of gentle magic. He is learning now, in his own way, and you smile quietly, satisfied. The oxen shift once more, tail flicking lazily, before settling back into the shadows. You stand slowly, stretching your aching back and shoulders. The labor of the day weighs on your muscles, yet the satisfaction that comes from guiding life into the soil steadies your spirit. Step by step, furrow by furrow, you have nurtured growth, balanced water, fended off intruders, and prepared the field for tomorrow. The work is never truly done, but for now, the land rests in equilibrium. Historians still debate whether Sumerian farmers saw themselves as stewards of the land or mere servants of necessity. You know, quietly and without argument, that you are both. The barley will grow if the river is kind, the skies provide sun and rain, and the pests remain in check. You have done your part. You have guided, nurtured, and protected life, and the land responds in its silent, steady way. The evening breeze carries a soft rustle through the reeds and a faint clatter from your makeshift scare devices. You take a deep, slow breath, feeling the cool night air fill your lungs. The field lies calm and organized, the water flowing evenly, seedlings safe beneath the soil, and the lattice fence standing guard. You pause, absorbing the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent, the rhythm of labor matched by the pulse of life around you. Finally, you settle beside your son, letting the last rays of sunlight fade behind the distant horizon. The field rests, the river murmurs softly, and the night hums with gentle life. You run a hand through your son's hair, feeling the warmth of family and the quiet triumph of survival. Tomorrow will bring more work, more irrigation, more observation, more tending. But tonight, the field sleeps, and you can rest beside it. The gentle wind, the murmur of water, the faint rustle of reeds, and the soft breathing of your son create a lullaby. You allow yourself to sink slowly into the calm of evening, the ache of labor softened by satisfaction. Step by step, day by day, you have guided life into the earth, nurtured it, and prepared it to thrive. The barley will grow, the river will flow, and the cycle will continue. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the warmth of the soil, the weight of the day's labor, and the quiet promise of tomorrow. The field is alive, safe, and patient, as are you. Rest is well earned, and dreams will follow like the gentle flow of water through furrows. As night deepens, the world softens around you. The river whispers quietly, carrying memories of the day's work through the still canals. The barley sleeps beneath the soil, cradled by damp earth and nurtured by your hands. The oxen breathe slowly in the darkness. The lattice fence sways gently in the evening breeze, and your son sleeps peacefully, his small chest rising and falling in rhythm with the night. You feel the ache of the day in your muscles, but it is softened by a quiet contentment, the deep satisfaction of knowing you have tended life itself. The stars begin to shimmer faintly above, pinpricks of light in a sky growing velvet dark. The air is cool, carrying faint scents of river silt and distant fires. You breathe deeply, letting the calm settle through every fiber of your body. The field, once alive with movement and labor, now hums quietly in balance, each seed resting, each channel steady, each guardian in place. Let the world fade gently around you. your mind softening with it. The rhythms of water, soil, wind, and life blend into a steady lullaby. Tomorrow will demand your hands and attention again, but for tonight, rest. Feel the earth beneath you, the soft hum of night around you, and the gentle pulse of life continuing in quiet assurance. You have guided, nurtured, and protected, and the world responds with a quiet, steady patience. Now close your eyes. Let the gentle night cradle you, and drift into sleep alongside the barley, the river, and the whispers of Sumer itself. End of script. Sweet dreams.